Hey guys, this is Shakti from Around the Wicket, where we not only speak about the game, but we try to learn more about the humans behind our sport. And today I'm very excited to have the Sydney Sixers coach, Greg Shipperd. As we all know, Greg coached the Sydney Sixers to a successive BBL season last year against the Melbourne Stars. He's had IPL experience with the Delhi Daredevils when it first started off, and has coached the Melbourne Stars in the BBL. And in the Australian cricket scene, he has been the coach of the Tasmanian Tigers as well as Victoria. Greg, thank you so much for joining me on Around the Wicket.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure to be with you, Shakti.
So how have you been spending your time? I know that you come to Sydney to coach the Sixers, but most of the time you're spending in Victoria. How's the time been during this COVID crisis?
Yeah, I think like the rest of society, really been locked away and trying to do the right thing to make sure that we get back to living our normal lives as soon as possible. So stuck at home with my immediate family and was just about to emerge in the last week, but things seem to have taken a turn here in Victoria. So, back indoors, bunker down and let the medical people and the authorities do their business. And, really looking forward to, cricket starting up again and as a coach getting back to doing what we do best, look after our players.
So let's chat about cricket. Tell us about your playing days. I mean, you started off with Western Australia, then you moved to Tasmania, where you coached there for 11 years as well. But tell us about how the playing days were, during those times to what it is now.
Well, you have to have a long-term memory to remember when I started, way back in my first-class career in 1977-78. In those days, we were playing red ball cricket only, no such thing as white ball cricket, no such thing as T20 cricket, 8 ball overs. We had bonus points in shield matches, which was not great for a stodgy batter like me that was coming in in those days at 5 or 6 and having to play at the back end of our bonus points like it was a one-day game. So I learned some lessons the hard way early on, but luckily, I've been surrounded by, wonderful people from the very start of my career, and they're the people that inspired me and moved me towards cricket. In the West Australian environment at that time, it was like being involved in a test side. There was one stage there where I was the only non-test player with test playing experience in the Shield team. So it was a hard team to get into. And so you hung on for grim life to stay in that team. But as I said, I was surrounded by wonderful coaches, wonderful mentors in the early days who taught me a lot about cricket from a playing point of view, being surrounded by John Inverarity, a doyen of captaincy and first-class cricket, my first Shield captain, Rod Marsh, Dennis Lilly, Terry Alderman, just to name a few of the people. And back in clubland at Scarborough Cricket Club, I had the two Derricks, a guy called Derek Woodhead, my primary school teacher, who was a first-class cricketer, and Derek Chadwick, who was a champion first-class cricketer for WA, but also an elite footballer who was a school teacher and used to drive me to training and drop me off home. So I used to go out and open the batting with him. And as I say, I had some wonderful people, supporting in those early days.
And you coached, I just said that you coached Tasmania for 11 seasons. How was that time there? You actually led them to their maiden Shield appearance in 93, I think it was, and then again in 97, 98, and then 2002, 2003, or was it 2001, 2001 and 2002 to cap it off. How was that time there with the Tigers as a coach?
Yes. Sometimes I lose my way in the decades as well there. So, 10 years in Western Australia and post the Rebel Tour of South Africa, it became more difficult to get a game in that WA team, and Tasmania threw a lifeline to me. They were struggling at the time, and I think Cricket Australia might have had something to do with it in organising the recruitment of myself, Dirk Wellham and David Gilbert from New South Wales, who sort of were given a mission, if you like, to go down to Tasmania and play for a few years while our bodies and minds lasted. And so I thought I was going there for 3 years as a player, played my 3 years, but at that same time, we had 6 people running Tasmanian cricket at the time. And so Dirk was a coach, I was an assistant coach, a fitness provider, a marketing person, and so we did a lot of everything. And I was graciously given by one of our elite administrators in Dennis Rogers an opportunity to coach the Tasmanian team, which started off with a short-term time frame in my mind and expanded to 11 seasons. And I'm really proud of the foundation that we built in those years, and particularly some of the players that I was involved with at the time remain lifelong friends, and I still interact with those players, and it was a wonderful time in my cricketing journey.
And one of the more famous players, or possibly one of the greatest Australians to play for our country, in Ricky Ponting, also played for you and under you. Tell us about Ricky and what made him stand out so much.
Yeah, I guess as a coach, you're always looking for team success, but to have team success, you've got to have the talent and the resources to cobble a plan together and have players capable of executing. And we certainly found a diamond in the rough in Ricky Ponting when I first set eyes on him at, I guess, 16 and a half years, feeding the ball to him in the bowling machine, just from a pure observational point of view. The talent was there, the movement was there, the execution, the lack of fear, and as I got to know more and more of him, those other additional components of being an elite champion, which he was, came to the fore. His strategic awareness of the game, his mentality, his want to compete, the inner confidence he had, all worked together, his physicality, all worked together to provide this young champion. And he had a nice sidekick at the time in Michael DiVenuto, two young Tasmanians that we were able to put into the team at 3 and 4 that lasted well over a generation. And before them in our order, we were also really proud to engage with Jamie Cox and Dean Hills, who has, for 10 or so years sat behind the Australian cricket team now as an analyst and provider of, coaching, the mind and the skills of the game. So, our top 4 was elite, and we followed that with Sean Young and Rod Tucker, the umpire. So all of those guys played well over 100 games of first-class cricket, and so our selectors at that time did a great job in setting a foundation for Tasmanian cricket. But Ricky, has just shown in his growth, in his play for his country, and now as a coach and media performer, he's just a champion in all formats.
Yeah. I guess one of the more important phases is after 11 years of coaching for Tasmania, you went to Victoria, and you've mentioned that the passing away of one of your good friends after the playing days, David Hookes. How important was that period when David passed away and then you took over Victoria?
Yeah, look, that was an interesting time. It certainly, I was thrown a lifeline by Cricket Victoria back into coaching as David's assistant coach. He had some media engagements at the time, and the wise Sean Graff, saw me as a safety net, if you like, as an experienced coach to an inexperienced coach in David, who had to race off every now and then to Sydney to do his show or get on the radio. And so, we didn't like each other much as opponents. We really banged heads. I was quite a quiet player, but David and others, were quite prolific with, their sledging at that particular time. And, we didn't like each other much. But once we grew to know each other and were on the same team, as often happens, you start to, stroke in the same direction, and we became great mates. I reckon I learned a hell of a lot about the game and the way to think about the game from him. He was a great storyteller and, thought outside the box a lot. And so we both came together, I guess, to put the icing on the cake. There'd been some terrific work done prior to us being involved by John Scholes and his team. They hadn't just quite made, that Shield winning, process and embedded that, but they were headed in the right direction. And fortunately, David really galvanised our group at that time, and we started to play, with a really purposeful plan and play some good cricket. And I was just in the in the right place at the wrong time, really, for the circumstances to be given, you know, another opportunity to coach again, and another 11 years passed off coaching Victoria, which I was, you know, thrilled about, but thankful for the foundation that was set at that time by David, and we always miss him.
David Hussey was here on Around the Wicket a month ago, and he was saying that the reason for the success of the Victorian cricket team during that period of dominance of Shield was due to a lot of great players that didn't play for the national team was part of the Victorian setup. Do you feel that's the major reason, or do you feel there were other reasons that contributed to the success?
Well, I think it was a real team effort by everyone on and off the field in Victorian cricket, where, you know, our team's a product of the system behind it, and so our institute programs, our premier cricket, our off-field support in terms of resources and facilities was always strong. The players, you know, once we sort of you know, hit that 2003-04 final, really developed that belief in the process and the plan that we'd put together. I've got to say I was pretty relentless in making sure that that was visible at all times, and you know, we grew as a group, and the players were really hungry. You need a hungry team, and, you know, a team that wants to develop themselves individually, but also, you know, really respects the boundaries of the team itself. And, you know, we're a really strong unit for many years, even with changes of personnel. You know, there a really solid culture had been grown, and the players have lived that, you know, strongly. Through the middle stages of my coaching tenure, the organisation changed to a focus of producing Australian players, so to speak, rather than winning titles. You know, one stage we'd been in 15 out of 18 possible finals.
Well,
but finally, I think the penny dropped also with the Australian selectors, that these guys in this Victorian team, you know, were pretty good cricketers, and that their team efforts, you know, needed some reward. And so we had a period where we generated, you know, around 20 new Australian players, some of them older players making their journey, like Nanez and Lewis and Harwood and McCain, and their journeys were wonderful. Didn't last long, but, you know, they were rewarded beautifully for the efforts that they put in. And we had some longer term players, the Whites, the Husseys and Hodges and Hastings and Mackay and others. So, you know, then we started to focus more on developing that younger player into the Australian system, which is, it's always a work in process. And it depends again on as well how the international sort of the state Australian selectors view your players. So Victoria have done particularly well, I guess, in the last 15 years in that respect.
Exactly. You touched upon young players. I guess, you know, you've been coaching for a long period now. You've seen young players come in, and, you know, with times, cricket has changed, pace of the game has changed, mentality has changed as well. When you see a young cricketer coming in now, what are the things that you look forward to when you see them, which you know that you can help them develop or grow the game?
Yeah, I guess you've got to interpret every single player, you know, individually. You know, there are some players that, you know, I see you did an interview with Chris Rogers, and I look at cricket as, you know, once you get into the nitty gritty, it's a risk reward sort of game, particularly from a batting point of view. And you've got low risk players and high risk players, and you know, we need all of those types within a dressing room. Coaches love all-rounders. They love batters, bowlers, great fielders and leaders. But you can also have that same perspective within the batting framework. You can have low-risk players, high-risk players, medium-risk players, but more importantly, players who can play and switch their brain on to play through those zones depending on the state of the game. And so my job as a coach has always been to try and provide that cricket intellect to our players, whether they be young or old, as they're interpreting, you know, each match, each phase of matches, each season within their careers. So, you know, I let those young guys do their thing, but try and sort of also bring them back in within the guidelines of what good team cricket is. And I think, you know, you can see Maxwell and Finch and those type of players as those, you know, high-risk players, but they've been wonderful team players as well. And the Victorian culture really, you know, brought that out in all types of players within the team. So I say let them play. understand their strengths, but also try and, you know, build on those strengths in whatever those areas of the game that you think that they can contribute more to the team and to their own games.
Greg, is there any young player that you see nowadays that just gets it? You don't have to change much at all. Has the brains along with the game as well?
Yeah, I thought when I first fed balls again to, you know, young Sam Harper from Victoria, I thought, you know, there's a young man that I do not even have to look at touching that technique. You know, it's just about them now playing the game and learning to experience the games and how to navigate their way through now 3 different formats of the game, which was not a problem for us in our vintage. So young Sam Harper, Will Pukowski's another one who's shown, you know, great aptitude in that area. I can see Jack Edwards in Sydney. I can see young Jason Sanger as young players who are very aware of the game at an early age. Prior to that, Peter Hanscom, Aaron Finch were real consumers of the game. Lucky enough to coach Steve Smith this year, and he, like, you know, Ricky Ponting, is one of those guys where there's magic, there's mystery, there's mastery, and there's magnificence in the combination of things that they can bring to the table. So it was a really enjoyable experience to have an opportunity to coach him live this season, along with someone from the bowling side of view, which is not my necessarily area of expertise, but Josh Hazlewood as well was, you know, a tremendous character, and I really love watching him train, prepare and play and celebrate the game after.
Yeah. You talked about players, now coaching. You know, what are some of the attributes that you feel was or has been your strong points when it came to coaching?
I think as a coach, I think when I've studied other coaches, and I love reading books about coaches, watching coaches perform on TV, spent a lot of time in my early days in Tasmania looking towards America, and the 3 key things that came out about serial winning coaches were that they needed to be a performer, a learner and a leader. And so I've used my best endeavours to be, you know, all of those three as well as I can. In terms of being a performer, I guess it's like being a teacher. You're out in front of the class, or you're representing the school, the organisation. Same as being a parent, really. And then you're putting on, you know, a show in the sense that you're trying to drag or galvanise a group of people together to chase their dream, to chase a collective dream. And so you've got to, in doing that, you've got to, you know, celebrate the good times. You've got to provide discipline in the difficult times. And so you're putting on a show. There absolutely needs to be light and shade in your presentation and your manner. And, you know, I've learnt those tricks of the trade, I guess, over the years. In terms of being a learner, you've got to be up with the game. You've got to understand your game like nobody else, or at least endeavour to keep learning and keeping up with the times. And so from 1990 to 2020, there's been a lot of changes in the rules of the game, the colour of the balls that we play with, the formats, and the environments we've played in, the contracting of the players, the full-time livelihoods that are now expressed in cricket. So, and in terms of being a leader, you know, a leader is, you know, by actions, by word, by energy, and work ethic. All those sorts of things, you know, tie together to like, I guess, give me and other coaches a framework to work towards.
Yeah. I guess away from Australia, you had the wonderful experience of, coaching an IPL franchise in the Delhi Daredevils, and you coached them for a few years there. How was your experience, coaching in the IPL, and what makes the IPL, so special?
Yeah, well, that sort of, I was lucky again. I got an opportunity on the back of my team's great efforts, and so the Victorian team, we really connected with T20 cricket. It certainly suited the personality of our playing group, and we won the first 4 titles to be won, and we're in the 5th. We were in the grand final, and so one day I was fortunate enough to get a call from Dennis Lilly, I guess, on the back of that, who was the mentor of the Delhi Daredevils, and said, the ex-teammate of mine, and he said, would you like to come and join me in India to be involved in the first IPL. Well, I said yes to that, you know, in a flash, and arrived in Delhi and was met by the great T.A. Shaker and presented to our group. The first function we went to was a GMR group where there was about 4,000 people who were celebrating the building of the Delhi International Airport, which filmed thousands of people, and I thought, wow. And the media there was 200 or 300 media there also to witness this new team, you know, emerging in this competition. And they'd formulated a cracking squad, so I was really pleased to be a part of that. Every game over there is like an AFL grand final or a state of origin match. Every single game, you know, the crowd, the anticipation is there. The media expectations and reviews are there. And it's a way of life, and it was just a blessing to be a part of that process and to interact with, you know, the players that I did in that team. I think we had 4 or 5 national captains. I think on one of the lists you showed me, you know, we missed out on Shoaib Malik as well, who was in that list of players, and AB de Villiers, Sehwag, Gambhir, Baby Shikhar, Amit Mishra. You know, the names are still, you know, fresh in my mind. And I still interact with a couple of those young coaches in Mithun Manas, Rajat Bhatia, who from time to time, you know, ask for advice all these years later, which is cool.
Yeah, a couple of the other players that you didn't mention was Glenn McGrath, Vittori, Tilakaratne, Dilshan as well. So you had a few players in your team that are superstars, you know, of their own countries. How was it to manage a team full of superstars? Because it didn't always go your way. You know, what lessons did you learn after knowing that even though you had superstars, you know, unless you play as a team, you cannot, you know, be successful in that arena?
Yeah, I think we generated a really strong and healthy platform at the start of that IPL 1. We made the semi-final that year, but Warnie blew us away in the semi-final. The difficulty with such a rich array of international stars was that you could only pick 4. Yes. And I've got to say that the professionalism of the players that missed out were unbelievably outstanding, and that's why they were champions. Coaching Glenn McGrath was very much like that involvement I've mentioned about Josh Hazlewood. You know, he was a legend of the game. Learnt so much from him about, you know, just the methodology and the thinking behind his bowling, and how simple it was, but how disciplined he was to, you know, stick to his plans. And, you know, he had a steel trap mind around understanding the game and the opposition. He was ahead of his time in, you know, he could always reflect on the wickets he took and the lead up to the wickets. And so what a great tool to have, in, you know, from game to game, from year to year and series to series. And so those guys really responded exceptionally well to not being in the team. Dan Vittori was another one who I engaged in bringing him into selection meetings. And there were times when he, if you like, fell on the selection sword and said, I think another combination, Greg, is a better combination to go with. And which meant he missed out on, you know, playing in some games, which was, you know, it was how would you feel about that? Normally it was just a ridiculous situation, but, you know, they were terrifically professional. And in the next couple of years, we added David Warner, Dirk Manners to that process, and others. And so, you know, each team had those same combinations to work through. Dilshan was a leader in terms of, you know, batting 360, and to have him express along with Virender Sehwag, you know, that attacking flair around, if you like, the steeliness and the Kohli type, you know, mechanisms that Gambhir brought to the team. There were some wonderful, you know, combinations that when they went out and batted, you know, we played some good cricket, but didn't win the title, which was a frustration.
Yeah, Gambhir went on to become one of the more successful IPL players and captain as well. I guess here in Australia with the BBL, you know, you've coached the Sixers and before that the Stars. What has been the difference between those two franchises?
I don't think there's a big difference at all. Both are very consistent in their ability to play at the top of the table or around that semi-final area. Rarely have they been down. A couple of times we were down with the Sixers on the back of some injuries, and Moses had a difficult season one year, and the loss of his leadership around their group had a significant effect on the group, and so we got to feel both sides of the ladder. And certainly when we were sixth, that really generated a strong spirit within the group to bounce back hard, which is a bit, I guess, like our Prime Minister's suggesting. He really wants one of these V-shaped recoveries. I guess our Sydney Sixers were working on that before, so we sort of understand the concept. But the Stars and the Sixers, laden with talent, you've got them for a short space of time. You need to get them on the same page quickly, and not difficult to do. Everyone loves this format of the game, and they love responding to, having crowd support, media support that we do get, and that drives an energy. It's certainly no circus. I've had to chip one of our journalists, a month or so ago, that was calling us a fairy floss type competition. Well, that's not what I feel when I go to a training session, with the Sixers, or in previous years with the Stars. It's full on, it's professional, and the players are playing, for great rewards. If you get the IPL and around the world playing short form cricket, everyone's deadly serious about it and want to win. So, two great teams, great work ethic, backed by good off-field teams. It's a wonderful experience.
You had a successful season, winning the final against the Stars. Then got the rain held off. How exciting was it? After a full season with some good players joining in towards the end as well, and then lifting the trophy against a very strong Melbourne Stars team.
Yeah, look, we the 2 years, it was an effort over 2 years, I guess, and we were heading strongly in the right direction, playing some super cricket, and we had a poor finish in a semi-final against the Renegades, who went on to win. But I was pretty pleased with. There was a big turnover at the start of that season of players, and a lot of new faces that come into our group, new internationals, Tommy Curran, James Vince into the group, young Pope, young Philippi, Manenti, as a replacement for Lyon, along with our sort of core group. So, there was some question marks, but the players really got the hang of our Sixers language and were starting to really express themselves well. And so that was a really disappointing moment, that semi-final loss. And at the start of this year, I wondered whether they had that drive, and they sure did. They really had sort of banked them on the learnings. They understood, what we were good at. They understand more and more about this format of the game. They believe more and more about the things they see in the vision and on the whiteboard as we prepare to play, and they went out and expressed super well. And our sort of list management team, I think, did a super job around making sure that there were spaces available to get Smith and Hazelwood into the matches at the back end of the season. That was a great opportunity for us and for everyone in the competition to see those guys play. Melbourne Stars, again, were a highly respected team, full of match winners, as we saw with the Stoinis effort, 147. I think that was a real turning point for us, that we had to ask ourselves, were we prepared to have that happen to us again? So we did a forensic deep dive into that performance, and I think we won 5 in a row after that, and took the title. So hopefully we're hungry as that again next season, and we keep developing our every single player on our list.
A couple of players you mentioned. One is obviously Moses Henriques, captain of the squad, and Steve Smith also recently. They've come out about raising awareness of mental health and mental illness. And you mentioned Will Pucovski as well from Victoria. How important is the role of a coach to actually help the players be open to that, and also find a balance of not working them so hard that they get, breakdowns. So
I guess the most important session you have with your squad is the first session of any season, any year, or, I talk about building a generation of players. So those first insights that players get to that group environment, that, that where they understand that should there be troubles and you're finding it difficult, that there are avenues to search, to see, to, explore in terms of, being open and vulnerable around, your problems. And that's just starting to emerge in the last few seasons around the awareness with Moses and Will and others that have been open around, their challenging times. And it's also, from a coaching point of view, it's about setting that foundation and making sure that you and your staff and the team are always looking after each other's back and looking for behaviours that might indicate, someone who's going through a tough time, and asking that question, are you okay? And then making sure that, you're getting a straight, if you can, making sure you're getting a straight and open answer. But just making sure that everyone's looking after each other's back. There's been some notable cases that you've mentioned there, and I saw it firsthand. And I think Moses Henriques is an absolute, he's in the Ricky Ponting, Steve Smith class in terms of the respect he has generated from the whole cricketing playing community, because if players are out there and they're having troubling times, they do go to Moses privately. I know he's an absolute giver in terms of advice and information about, where to go, where to seek support, and there's always light at the end of the tunnel. So it's been going on, but it's more, we're more aware of it now.
Excellent, Greg. I think for any young cricketer coming up and who is going through moments of weakness or struggle, I guess it's clear that there are a lot of avenues there to reach out to and seek help. So I really appreciate you going through that with us.
Can I just add there that I know when I came back after being involved in the elite level, the elite players often get, each shown and it's talked about at that level. But I remember going back to the Melbourne Cricket Club players where I do some batting coaching, and I sort of had a moment of thought as well, as that, it's not just the high-profile cricketer that this afflicts. It can be a club player or an association player who who's just as involved in his club and his performances, and he or she wanting to do well on behalf of that club, that feels those challenges and doesn't quite understand, how to work through those issues. So it was really important that the club and association players, male and female players, sort of understand that at all levels, this is and can be an issue, and to rally around or seek advice and seek support if you are, in a difficult phase of your life.
Exactly. Thanks for expanding on that. I've got 8 rapid fire questions, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
Of all the cricketers that you have coached, who is or was the hardest working?
Wow. Well, there's a lot of them. I've coached a lot, the hardest working. Well, I've only had a really brief snapshot of Steve Smith. I know he works very, very hard on his game. Moses Henriques, there's no guy who works harder physically and in the nets, and thinks about the game, and as a leader and as a captain, his ability to express himself to his group obviously means that he's given it some and a lot of pre-thought. So I think that's hard work as well, not just physical work. And we do encourage players to be leaders, not just with the tag of captain behind your name, but also you can be a physical or a social leader around a group and really set examples. Ponting, Matthew Elliott springs to mind. Aaron Finch is now has really sort of immersed himself in training. I'm probably doing a disservice to a lot of players. Fawad Ahmed, from a bowling point of view, no one did more work behind the scenes and bowled more balls to make sure that he was in touch with his skill set. So, bowlers as well as batters, spend countless hours physically and technically preparing for their game. So, gee, hard to give a quick answer to that one.
I'm sorry to put you in a position to answer that. I mean, you talked about Aaron Finch. I guess his leadership was always there, and now he's starting to show that he's also a world-class player to go with it. Second question for you, Greg, is your favourite cricketer in the current times?
My favourite current cricketer in the current times, I really think I'd have to say Virat Kohli really interests me, particularly his ability to play those 3 formats of the game. I loved his race to fitness and the discipline around the fitness that allows him to be that not-out batter that's still, charging up and down the wickets like we see Warner do now. And, they're setting a great signal to cricketers all over the world that, physical preparation and disciplines and just his ability to play technically correct shots. I often refer my players to an innings he played against Australia at the SCG. And as the pressure built up in the game and our Australian bowlers were trying to smother him, he had a shot for every single type of ball that was bowled to him. And so his all-round cricket, the fact that he's a leader and he's so alive in the field, he's one of those genuine all-rounders that, really, sets the bar in terms of, players chasing, something or someone.
Excellent. Your greatest Victorian cricketer?
I did say that Brad Hodge for me was the best domestic player. I guess I'd sort of coached in the Victorian system for performances that he delivered in and on that domestic stage. He almost became too good for the Shield cricket stage, and right at the back end of his career, it sort of almost didn't provide him enough of a challenge, and so he immersed himself more in the short earth forms of the game. But and then he became a super, smart player, great captain, and I guess he's just poking his ears up, around the coaching scene now. So I think he was a tremendous player, and a close second would be one of my favourites. My other son, that's not really my son, in David Hussey. And the way he played the game was also, he was a real game turner and momentum changer, and he bowled a bit, caught beautifully, and was often a glue in the dressing room. So I really liked the way,
probably two of the unluckiest cricketers as well to average 50 plus and not play as much international cricket, because they were following so many great cricketers that were playing at that time for Australia.
The best team man ever, though, was a guy called Rob Quiney, who would just win John Scholes medals for fun for Victoria. And, if you point players towards, that type of person, squad person, team person, you don't look past him.
One coaching message that you always fall back on?
I guess, having a strong plan, never-ending learning. 3 key things are know your game, know their game, but immerse yourself in the game. So, there's a lot of things to do in those 3 spaces. A couple of those you don't control. You do control your game to a large extent when you're speaking to players, and I guess it's about coaching as well, knowing your coaching strengths, but knowing what the opposition and the challenges, their strengths and weaknesses, and the game, the strategy of the game, the 4 disciplines, physical, mental, technical and tactical, are all, a key part of, building anyone's framework.
Who is the funniest cricketer you have coached?
Wow, funniest cricketer I've coached. Oh, again, Brad Hodge was as quirky as they come. He was a funny player, and as a new one emerging through, Harry Conway's a pretty interesting type.
Harry Conway.
Well, he entertains royally the teams he's involved with at training for New South Wales Blues. I've had many interactions with him. and Harry's a pretty funny character. So they're probably two standouts there. Bruce Yardley from way back in the old ages was a really funny fellow as well.
Harry Conway has some interesting celebrations after taking wickets as well. He's definitely a funny dude. Most enjoyable part of coaching for you?
Oh, to see people progress, to see people, develop, from the young 16-year-old that was, Ricky Ponting coming through, and, he had some rough times, some challenging times in his early 20s as he worked it all out, to see him become an Australian captain, to see him now, front media shows, to speak in front of crowds of hundreds of people and do it so professionally and so well. Just see that development, in not only him, but in most of the players that you coach. That's your aim, is to develop every single one of them. He's a spectacular example.
Yeah.
But, they all give coaches, the not so obvious ones, all give us a little piece of pleasure along the way.
Yep. Two more questions, Greg. Favorite place to play cricket?
My office was the MCG for 14 years, and you just take a deep breath in and look around that wonderful stadium every time you walk out onto the ground. And I'm lucky enough to still be able to do that, go out and inspect the wicket, train there with the young Victorian players and MCC cricketers that I still look after. And the facilities behind the scenes are outstanding. And in the olden days, I have to, say that the old Wacker ground, the fair dinkum bouncy Wacker ground, where it was fast and bouncy and spectacular place to play cricket.
Yeah. Final question: who's the smartest player you have coached?
Chris Rogers is up there. The New South Wales team as a group are very smart cricketers. They love their crossword puzzles. They're developing their language all the time, and they're a highly intellectual group. Ed Cowan's a particularly intelligent a person. I guess academically it might be those two, but that's another tough one. Gee, you come up with some hard questions.
Yeah, when it comes to reading the game, Greg, who do you feel, is a natural at it?
I think David Warner read the game, way before a lot of other people, in terms of, being in the right place at the right time and prepared to take those overt risks and challenge the normality of batting. And, he really, tore the house down and has become a world-class player, and he's learnt to engage that attacking format over, 3 formats for a long period of time, very successfully now. I guess the biggest get from left field was when we found, Shane Watson, out of a training session at an Institute of Sport Fast Bowlers Academy. We found him, and 3 weeks later he was playing for Tasmania in first-class cricket, and 18 months later he was playing for Australia. So, that's sort of the biggest progression I've seen over a short period of time. The other biggest progression is made in my time that's changed the game immensely, and I've got a couple of props for you here. It's one of my old cricket bats versus the modern cricket bat. Have a look at this. And you'll probably notice the width of that bat there versus the width of this bat here.
Wow.
So that was one I used in the old days. Lily used to call it the
It's a Gray Nichols, is it?
Gray Nichols used to call it a toothpick versus one of Moses Ulrich's bats, one of Moses's bats here. Look at the sort of profile of that. And that's a beautiful DSC bat. But this is what they're using these days to propel the ball, over the fence and out of the ground.
It's like that famous Barry Richards photo where he's holding his bat and holding David Warner's bat. Greg, thank you so much, mate. I appreciate all the chat that you've, all the words of wisdom that you've shared with us. I've learned a lot. I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners will as well. They don't call you the the guru for no reason. So all the best for the season coming up. Hopefully we can get some cricket, and hopefully the BBL is still on schedule, even though, you know, it all depends on where the situation is at. Appreciate your time on Saturday. Hopefully chat soon and see you back in Sydney soon.
Yeah, it's been an immense pleasure, and I really love your work. You're, you know, spreading the message about cricket, and you do it, you know, on such a diverse basis. Congratulations to you.
Cheers, Greg. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All the best.